Hello from the Eco Power Stadium in Doncaster, where everybody's gone home pretty much. And Hull City were beaten 4-0 here in their first domestic friendly of the pre-season campaign. The caveat, Fletch, who's with me from the 1904 club, I would say, is that for much of that game it was a second string, wasn't it? It was City's youngsters. Xavier Simons was the captain, Ivo Pandor played, but the rest of the team, there was Nathan Tinsdale, Stan Ashby, Sincere Hall. There was a lot of young players playing, and they found themselves 2-0 down at half-time, 4-0 down early in the second half before Tim Walter made a flurry of changes, 9 in fact, and on came the senior players, Ryan Giles, Louis Coyle, Sean McLaughlin, Alfie Jones, blah, blah, blah. And obviously the dynamic of the game changed markedly. They created some chances, weren't able to break through, valuable minutes in the tank. But I think the bigger concern, and it's something that Tim Walter has just said to me at full time, is it highlights the lack of quality, the lack of depth in his squad. And if they are to challenge in the Championship this season, they need more players. Obviously, Cody Drama, we put that out this morning that was going to get done today. It was confirmed, I think, about 5 o'clock. He's likely to be involved against Newcastle on Saturday, but that is just one player. Obviously, Ryan Giles, we know, has arrived, but they need a lot more players. Fletch, what's your takeaway from tonight?
Yeah, tough to watch, but I think
we're very close here, aren't we?
We are.
It's a bit weird, isn't it?
And the people who think we're twins, so probably let's have a little look. There you go.
There we
Screenshot
go.
to your heart's content.
Hi, everyone.
But I think, at the time when, especially it was 2-0 down, the manner of the goals and the way they went in, there were alarm bells ringing, even though it's only a pre-season game. But Tim said after the game that the players have been worked extremely hard this morning. And you have to remember it is an under-21s side, give or take.
And they're a good side, don't get me wrong. Doncaster are, they're well
they
drilled.
Played strong.
Yeah, they're a strong side, and obviously realistically, they should have got promoted from League Two. They're going to be favourites there or thereabouts this year. They looked a decent outfit, didn't they?
Yeah,
and they exploited the fact that Tim said to me after the Fenerbahce game that we conceded 5 goals and 5 of them were mistakes. And I think as good as Doncaster played tonight, they were gifted. You think of the first goal, really, really good finish.
All 4 goals were mistakes.
Yeah, really clever clip finish, but it came from him nicking the ball off Andy Smith, and Smith and Ashby struggled tonight, didn't they?
They did. And the reason why I mentioned the training is maybe because when you train extremely hard to the standard and the strength and conditioning that these players have to go through, their brains did at times. It's harsh to say, but they did look scrambled, and there was just some decision making in there which you wouldn't see during a league game. I think the third goal, I think it was in particular, where Ashby and Smith within the penalty area are actually about 5 yards apart, and there's a little glancing touch to make it 3-0. The second goal for Ironside, 2 players either side of him, but they're 5 yards apart. You can't give a man who scored 150 career goals in the Football League that kind of space, even in a pre-season friendly. You've got to teach good habits now in pre-season, and at the moment the goals are going in far too readily. Yeah,
it is a friendly. I think that is what we need to remind ourselves with. It is a friendly. It is only their third friendly of the summer, and it was a team. If you go through that team, it is a really inexperienced team. Even though that Brandon Fleming was playing left back and had a really tough night, he's not played a lot of football. Xavier Simons, he's really impressed me out in Turkey. But he hasn't played a lot of football for Hull City. Obviously, he did a bit for Fleetwood. Henry Sandat has come in from the under-21s, and because they haven't got any strikers, he's having to play up front. Now we expect Oscar Estepina back imminently. It wouldn't be a surprise to me to see him involved against Newcastle on Saturday.
I think he's going to have to give the fans a bit of confidence.
Yeah, and look, Drama's a good start. Drama is a really good, solid Championship signing, and I think that's a great start. But we're coming up to we're 2.5 weeks away from August 10 when Bristol City come. There's a lot to do, and I think my concern about I've really enjoyed, particularly not so much, obviously not tonight, it was horrendous, but I did enjoy watching City against Kasimpasa out at the training ground in Turkey, and I really enjoyed the first 35 minutes in Sarajevo against Fenerbahce, who incidentally have won their Champions League game 4-3 away in Switzerland tonight. But that's without creative players. Jason Lakilo is another player that was, an option. Was a wing player that's now leaving the club. They are so short, and we know that. It doesn't take a rocket scientist, but with 2.5 weeks to go, they have to get more players in before that first game. And I know
Yeah, you can't go into that opening game of the season with the attacking options that they've got at their disposal. With all due respect to players like Ryan Longman, you've got Ryan Giles tonight, who was playing as a right winger with Irma on the other side. So, I mean, you could start them two as wingers, but you still don't have a number 9 up front unless Oscar's fit.
Yeah, and that's so I guess we'll know that over the next week, 10 days. He's played pretty much non-stop for 12 months, hence why he's been given 2 weeks off after coming back from Bahia in Brazil. But I guess at the minute, because they're still in talks with the striker, we're pinning our hat on Oscar Estepinen, and we know he can score goals. They want a goalkeeper, and there's question marks over Pandor. Lovely guy, but I've got to be honest, I've not been convinced with him. I wasn't convinced with Pandor when I watched him again out in Turkey when we were there in March, and he played against Curacao, the national team. He looked, and that was his first game in English football, and I've seen nothing from Ivo Pandor yet that suggests he's adapting to. But he still hasn't played a championship game. In fairness to the kid.
What I would say to that, Baz, is I think there's more blame to be had with those in front of him in these last 2 games, because the tactical understanding will eventually come. I'm still confident in that, but whilst it's being put into practice, mistakes are they look more fragile, but it will come with time. But because of that, he's completely exposed. Yes, you can argue that he can maybe do better on one of these 2 situations, but at the same time, if there's nothing in front of him, he's essentially a sitting duck.
I shouldn't laugh at this because it's not funny, but I think back to the Doncaster, and those of you watching, and thanks for everybody that is watching, those that were unfortunate enough to be at the MKM Stadium in August last year when Doncaster came in the Carabao Cup, and you'll remember Matt Ingram stood on the edge of his box for what felt like about 88 minutes on the ball, and it was a bit like that tonight. That Ivo Pandor had so much of the ball, and there wasn't, in the 2 previous games we've seen a lot of rotation, a lot of movement from the defenders in front of him, and he's not really been on the ball for too long. But tonight there was just a complete lack of movement. I guess the argument would be, well, because it was the youngsters that they're not particularly familiar with how the new manager wants to play.
It's a difficult system to learn, especially when you're still learning your trade.
And you're trying to learn it out there against a well-drilled, well-oiled League Two team. That's not an easy.
They were at it.
They were, and I think it's a big learning experience for those youngsters. But as we touched on, it just further highlights the fact that the squad is nowhere near good enough. You look at the first team, and we saw it out in Turkey. The 1 to 11 is competitive, admittedly without genuine quality up front, but it's competitive. When you get onto the bench, there's nobody on the bench you're looking at thinking, well, he can come on and change the game. And that's not to discredit the likes of Sincere Hall or Nathan Tinsdale, who are Tinsdale did well, and 2 players that really impressed out in Turkey. Paul's asking on Facebook how many quality players do you think they need. I still think they need 7 or 8 to give them a competitive edge. What I don't want to see, and I know some fans are calling for 14, 15 players. The reason I don't want that quantity is because you then fill your squad.
You can't gel them.
You can't gel them, and you end up in a situation where you've got players with respect, like Jason Lakilo and even Ryan Longman to an extent, that you're having to farm out on loan, and you're paying for players that you don't want, that aren't good enough, and you're paying for them to be out in Portugal or in Ryan's case at Millwall. City don't need that quantity of players. They don't. They need 7 or 8 quality players. They can come in because. Generally, I'm not sure about the goalkeeper, and that's why they want another one, obviously.
But why get rid of Ingram?
I think Ingram wanted to go, Fletch, if I'm honest. I think Matt, if you look at since he played a massive part in winning the League One title, he's not really played. He didn't play a huge amount under Liam. I think he played 10 times in the Championship last year.
Geography can come into it, given his Wickham connections.
High Wickham,
as well.
He's played for Oxford City. I think from Matt's point of view, I just think he got fed up. I think he didn't feature under Liam. It looks like he wasn't going to feature under the new manager, and I think the opportunity. Sometimes you just need a break. You need a change. He's been here for 5 years. I think he just felt like, let's go somewhere else and a fresh start, and that's fair. I think he deserves it. I think he's been a tremendous servant. Played over 100 times for the football club, and he was. We both had the privilege, didn't we, of being here actually when, although. During COVID, when James Coppin just scored that free kick to snatch it, I think he snatched a point.
3-3.
Yeah, in the last minute. But Matt Ingram was pivotal in that season, so he goes with the blessing. But I think, they obviously need an experienced goalkeeper. I'm just not convinced that Pandor is ready ready to step in and be that Championship number one.
So what would you do? Would you use one of the... We've talked about Premier League clubs, and would you maybe look at, say, someone who's on the cusp of, let's say, the England under-21s? Like, I mean, he's out of reach now, I would say, but someone like a Carl Rushworth, or somebody who might be in a high elite academy who's ready to take that step into the Championship.
That's a good shout. I think like Rodek from Fulham that would be a sensible option.
Yeah.
They need somebody that can control the defence. I'm just not.
He knows Seri as well. I think.
Yeah. I'm not sure that I'm not writing off Pandor at all, because he's still young enough to improve. But I don't think he's ready at this stage. It's a big call, obviously, given everything all the water that's passed under the bridge, regardless of the goalkeeper in the last few months. I'm just not convinced that he's at the level.
Just going back to Cody as well, it's great that he signed for the football club, but would a right back have been top of the list? Is it just the way that it's come about? Because if you've got your captain there at right back as well, and we're screaming out for a number 9.
Yeah, but I think it's the way the chips fall, don't they? I don't think ideally you'd want to go and sign you'd want to go and sign 2 strikers and a couple of wingers first off and get them in. I think it's just the way.
It's not Football Manager, is it? We can't just click and choose who we want.
I think it's the way it's fallen. I think that's a good start, and I think it sends a good message out that City, are getting their act together. I think there's one or two other players that they're in. Well, there's quite a few players that are in talks. I think one or two are edging closer. Will we get another player in before Newcastle? It's possible. We'll have to wait and see. But look, I think that the big takeaway from tonight is it is only a friendly, but that squad is not capable or good enough of being a. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to be.
The first team, yes, they came on and had 30 minutes, but at least they actually made the game relatively, even though it's only a friendly, it became a level contest. And if anything, Hull City started edging it, especially Ryan Giles playing right wing tonight, which was interesting because I don't think he's ever played there before. But that's just the way the players are positioned because
it's the rotation, isn't it?
Yeah,
exactly.
Rotation, of course it is.
If he played Ryan Longman out wide right, which is his more natural position, he's got nobody to play through the middle, so he's having to fudge it with Ryan Longman. And I guess starting on Saturday, Longman will probably start through the middle. He's not an out centre forward. It shows, but they're having to fill in. So look, I think tonight's been a bit of a chasing experience, and I do feel for the young boys. We don't want to hang them out because this was they're trying to learn. They're only young. They're trying to learn on the job, trying to learn a really almost like maverick style of football.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, it is, and you've got like Henry Sandat, who hasn't been anywhere near the first team since he arrived from Southend. He's been back to Southend and he's come back, and suddenly, like Fenerbahce in front of 30,000 people on Thursday night,
it's a baptism of fire,
he's been thrown in up front, and then tonight here he's having to start a game up front in a completely balmy way of playing, very cavalier, and it's just not. It's hard, and they're doing it right. They're doing it in public. This is a training game being played in public, and they've got a long way to go. So look, it is a reality check for them, and I think again, as I said before, it just further emphasises how weak they are. But there's 2.5 weeks to go until the season starts, and they have to get. I don't think they need to. We're not going to get 8-9 players in before the season starts. That's the reality of the piece. Before the window closes on the 30th of August, yes. I think before the season starts, 2, possibly 3, and I'm okay with that because I want them to bring in quality players, and it will take. They are waiting on 2 or 3 loan players that are going to wait. That isn't going to happen until mid to late August. So that is, let's get that. Let's expect that. So it is going to be a patience thing, but they do need 2 or 3 in, particularly attacking players before August the 10th against Bristol City. But having said that, if they can get a winger in to replace Jaden Philogene and they can get Oscar up to speed, I would feel more comfortable about starting that game against Bristol City with Oscar and a winger up than. It's not the answer permanently, but it's a sticking plaster while they continue to work and get deals in. Before we head off, anything to add?
Just don't dwell on the fact that it's pre-season friendly. I know we're here to say our piece, and we're the lucky ones who do say our piece, and almost create the narrative and the agenda, don't we? But let's be honest, after losing 5-1 to Fenerbahce, you have one sleep on it. To be honest, about 15 minutes after, I'm just thinking, right, done, move on.
Yeah, I think it's one of them, isn't it? Look, it is friendly. You get balmy results all over the shop at this time
Got
of year.
beat 4-0 by Crewe once.
Yeah, look, and again, if it was the first team that were getting tonked 4 or 5-0, I'd be like, maybe you look more into it. But I think because it is the youngsters primarily.
They lost 4-0 to Leicester a couple of seasons ago, as well, didn't they? It's like, who remembers it really?
Yeah, but I think what the takeaway from it is there's a lot of work to do, and they know that they are working on it. As I said before, drama's a good start. Getting one or two more players in before the start of the season is hugely important. And then the pressure's on though. The pressure is on, but they're trying to do stuff, and you have to give them the space and time to do it and back the manager, because I think this system. I'm curious. My worry, this system in the Championship will get exploited. You know, when you've got one centre back pulling away and leaving massive gaps, if they lose the ball, which they have been doing in pre-season, the attacking team are straight on the goalkeeper. My worry is that the Championship will work them out very quickly, and that could be a problem. If they can get the players in to play the system, I think they'll have a chance. My worry...
It's going to be one of those, isn't it, where if you lead, you'll be able to protect it, but if you fall behind, it's going to be very challenging to get back into the game, I think.
But it all comes down to the quality of players they've got. If you look through their team, that was the thing last season, wasn't it? In the second half of last season, you looked at the team and you looked at the bench, and the bench was strong. You could have, on any given day, you could have Abdish on the bench, you could have Tufan on the bench, you could have, I know he didn't particularly hit the ground running, but you could have Sarori on the bench when he wasn't injured. You've got Connolly, and you looked, in terms of names, you looked down that bench, in March or April, and you thought, that's a strong side. The first 11 is strong, and the bench is strong. The problem they've got at the minute, the first 11 is okay, probably from defence through to midfield, but goalkeeper and attackers non-existent. And ultimately, it sounds daft, but your goalkeeper and your strikers win you and lose you a game.
Yeah.
And if they don't get that right, they're going to be losing a lot of games this season. Get it right, they've got a chance of winning more than they'll lose. So many questions. We don't have the answers right
One
now.
of them was from Peter, and he said, "Can Oscar play the system?" We don't know until he plays it. That's the simple answer to that.
I think he can. Pete, I think he can. I think Oscar's got enough about him. I think he's the type of striker. I think Tim has requested him back. They're not calling him back just because they can. Tim has specifically requested, a bit like Liam Rossinio didn't want him and sent him out to Metz at first, and then they had a conversation in January about bringing Oscar back. Decided not to bring him back, and then they sent him to Brazil, and they signed obviously Ohio and Billy Sharp. The new manager really wants him. He's requested that he comes back because he thinks that we talked about Glatzel, didn't we, at Hamburg, and how Glatzel was so pivotal to Walter's success, if you like, particularly in his style at Hamburg. Well, Estepino kind of fits that mould of that target man, the ability to hold the ball up, basically to play between the posts. They've created a lot of chances in the last 3 games in pre-season, barely scored because there's nobody in the penalty box to put the ball in the net, and that's ultimately what wins you a game. And Estepino has got that ability. He's streaky. We need to see more from him, but we know 13 goals in his first season, of which I think 7 came in the first couple of months. He has got that ability to score goals. He's shown it throughout his career. So if you give him the service, I think he'll score goals. But I also don't want to pin my hat on Oscar Estepino thinking, well, he's the saviour, and if he comes back, everything in the garden is rosy, because I don't believe it is. I think he's one option, but they need 2 or 3 others.
And we'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll be back against Newcastle on Saturday.